There has been so much discussion in the past few weeks over whether Battlefront 2 should return or they should just make Battlefront 3.
Both is good.
It's so interesting, so funny seeing how divisive this is in the comments as well. So many of you saying, oh, just bring Battlefront 2 back, bring back the live service, bring back new updates, continue to update the game. And then other players commenting that you just want to see a new Star Wars game. You want to see Battlefront 3, a fresh start to Battlefront. Well, today I'm going to share with you developer comments, news, and information that should give us a clearer idea of what to expect. Is it possible to even bring Battlefront 2 back in some capacity and update the game with things like mod support and crossplay? Or should they just leave Battlefront 2 where it is and move on to releasing Battlefront 3 in 5 to 6 years time, which is the likely timeline for getting a Battlefront style game made? This comment on my last video, the only thing we're not getting before GTA 6 is Battlefront 3, but hopefully I can get to 1 million subscribers before Battlefront 3, so subscribe. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Now, based on some developer comments and community discussion I found over the past few weeks, there's actually quite a lot to digest on this question, whether they should even make Battlefront 3. But I want to start off by sharing some stats about how many copies Battlefront has actually sold, because Battlefront 1 and 2 combined are the most successful Star Wars multiplayer games ever made. The only other multiplayer game that I know brings in a lot of revenue is Galaxy of Heroes, the mobile game. Mobile gaming's a different thing. They monetize it differently. A lot of microtransactions there. That game, I'm pretty sure, still makes a lot of money. But in terms of AAA Star Wars multiplayer games, Battlefront 1 and 2 combined, back in 2019, had sold over 33 million copies combined. That was 2019. That is a lot of games. Considering that was 6 years ago, there have been so many more sold since then, especially when we take into consideration the amount of times Battlefront 2 has been on sale. And also, it was released on the Epic Game Store a few years ago for free, which would, I think, throw out these numbers a little bit. But I mean, if they'd sold 33 million combined back in 2019, I can only imagine how much higher this number is now, considering the multiple resurgences Battlefront 2 has had. So, clearly Battlefront is extremely popular.
Yes.
And these kind of numbers are the things that the analysts and executives at companies like EA and Lucasfilm would be looking at. They want to see the money. They want to see what is actually going to sell and make them money. 33 million copies 6 years ago has made them a lot of money. So you can only think that by making a new Star Wars Battlefront 3, they're gonna make heaps more money, especially considering the amount of hype there is around the game, the campaign we've run over the past few weeks, the amount of players returning to the game or even picking it up for the first time. The fact Battlefront 2 is trending on the PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, and also on Steam as one of the highest selling games of the past few weeks. There's no denying it would be successful. But part of the problem of making Battlefront 3 is that it will cost hundreds of millions of dollars and years of development. That is a huge risk for any developer to take, especially considering Lucasfilm and Disney are going to want to take a huge cut of whatever the game earns. And this is also part of the reason EA initially moved away from making Battlefront 3. A pitch was made, I believe, in 2021, roughly around them, and it was rejected, reportedly because EA didn't want to pay the licensing fees.
Money!
But a few days ago, this was posted to the Star Wars Battlefront Reddit, how EA, Lucasfilm, and DICE could meet fans halfway. Bring crossplay, console mod support, and custom servers to Battlefront 2. Give the community the tools to let the game grow on its own. So this is the argument for bringing Battlefront 2 back to life. And we actually got a former developer responding to this. Mats Helge, who I've talked about in previous videos, who used to work at DICE on Battlefront, gave some insight into the feasibility of this. He said mods on Frostbite is quite difficult, so not possible without an engine upgrade. This means they'd likely need to either port Battlefront to the new version of Frostbite or just recreate the game in a different engine altogether. He also said crossplay would take 6 months. We need a UI redesign, 2 to 3 coders with network experience, and there'd have to be a patch where the old player data is merged with the new system so that everyone keeps their progression, keeps their unlocks, and can continue playing with a seamless transition into the remastered Battlefront 2. It would need 2 to 3 months of post-release work to fix all the problems discovered once the migration was done. I did the math on this before we shut down. I don't see any change in the tech that would reduce this cost. So basically, it seems like if they were to bring back Battlefront 2, it would be a bit messy. It would be a bit of a bumpy road, and there'd be some technical challenges to overcome. And some of these technical issues for bringing Battlefront 2's updates back and continuing to update the game might not even be able to be overcome. Matt also talked about some other problems, saying our hero selection is running out of space. Our allowed size on PlayStation is hitting a limit. The game is something like 120 gig to download, which is kind of absurd. The front end system is depreciated, and their matchmaking system is running at the high end on maps and mode. If they were to add more maps to the map rotation, it would likely make the game unstable. And this is part of the reason a remake might be a better option instead of a remaster. He talks about a lot of the systems being locked in place and are running on the edge of what they're meant to. It's already pushing the hardware and software to its limit. Basically, to add more content to Battlefront 2, the entire game would need to be upgraded to a new engine, to new systems, and it's not just as simple as, hey, why can't they just add more content to the game?
This is getting out of hand.
The thing is though, I know mods do this. I know mods add so much more content to the game, and I know they sometimes replace other assets that are pre-existing in the game. There are also mods like Battlefront Expanded that add heaps more heroes, reinforcements, troopers, appearances, and so much more to the game. So clearly it's doable, perhaps it's just not that simple. Now, additionally, I also think we should talk about how Battlefront 2 is somewhat of a complete game already. There is so much content in Battlefront 2 with something like 50 plus maps, multiple game modes, star cards, different eras, and the player base in Battlefront 2 is somewhat already spread between all the different modes. So maybe it is kind of just best to move on to a new Star Wars game, make Battlefront 3 instead. But the other argument to this is that there can always be more content. Why not continue to update Battlefront 2 with more heroes, more classes, more maps, more weapons, more everything? Because it did feel like, and I know a lot of the developers feel this way as well, that we were a bit shortchanged when Battlefront 2 was cancelled, when they decided to not continue the live service. The game felt like it had had that amazing resurgence coming back to life after the horrible launch it had, to only then be cancelled 3 years later. I just realized Battlefront 2 has been cancelled longer than they even worked on this game. It's been cancelled for what, over 5 years now. They really only updated the game for 3 or so years. 2017 to 2020. That's mind-blowing.
It's been 84 years.
And what I was going to say, the game has clearly stood the test of time. People are still playing it 5 years later, even though there's no content updates. It's just that good. It's probably the most successful multiplayer Star Wars game ever made. And with the play base still being strong, why take the risk and make a new one? Why not just bring this thing back to life in another way, do the remaster, get all the systems up and running, and get it to a level and a state where you can actually continue to update the game? Well, I guess at the end of the day, for EA, for Disney, for Lucasfilm, it's a matter of which is going to make them more money. Do they spend 6 months to a year or however long it would take to recreate Battlefront 2 and bring it back to life and start adding new updates and give us a whole roadmap of what's to come? Or do they do the longer term plan? Spend hundreds of millions of dollars developing Battlefront 3 and then release that with a new monetization model with new everything, essentially. The thing about this as well is that if they were to re-release Battlefront 2 in some capacity, a remaster, a remake, whatever, I'm pretty sure they would change the monetization model. Perhaps you would have to pay a smaller amount to repurchase the game, but then also perhaps they would introduce something like a season pass or some monetization model that kept players spending money. And we all know how Battlefront and microtransactions, especially after the launch, don't really go together. The fans don't want that necessarily, but I'd be open to some version of it if it was just skins, cosmetics, and things that aren't actual content, if it meant they could support the game for many years to come with the money they're making and continue to give us new Star Wars experiences within Battlefront 2. You can also say the same for Battlefront 3 though. Let's say they decide to go and make Battlefront 3. How do they monetize it? Is it just a $70, $80 game, one-time purchase, and then you spend no more money in the game and get access to all the content? Is that a viable option for them to continue to make money into the future? Or do they go another route? Do they make the game a cheaper purchase, for example, and then again, introduce some kind of season pass or cosmetic unlocks or DLCs? For multiplayer games, I personally don't like the idea of a DLC that divides the player base. We experienced that with Star Wars Battlefront 2015, with the Outer Rim, with the Bespin update, with the Death Star, and then Rogue One, each of these being their own game modes, only playable by those who purchase them. And I think that's a problem because it divides the player base, and when the game has less players as it gets older, it inevitably makes games harder to find. It makes the game harder to play in some ways. An idea that's been floated around recently as well and been suggested by some developers I've seen online is the idea to do both. First, do the Battlefront 2 remaster and re-release the game in 3 or 4 years' time, introduce new content updates and continue to upgrade the game into the future, and then while you're doing that, be building Battlefront 3 somewhere in the background and release that in what, 7 or 8 years from now? That seems like such a long way away, but like I said, I fight for a sunrise I will never see.
So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
What brings you to our remote sanctuary? Unfortunately, Battlefront 3. There's no Battlefront 3 here, unless you brought it with you. Let's hope this isn't the case. We have no guarantee that Battlefront 3 or even Battlefront 2 Remake is going to come out of any of this. But just as Matt says here, I don't expect Battlefront 3 to be announced at the end of this rally, but overall, yeah, I think there are people who are talking about it. Regardless of which way EA or Disney or Lucasfilm decide to go, Battlefront 3 is real. Battlefront 3 is being spoken about at these game studios, at Lucasfilm, at Disney. There is no way it's not. When you have Battlefront 3 comments exploding on TikTok, and even companies like Firefox getting involved in the action, Universal Pictures, when you have the servers crashing because too many people are playing Battlefront 2, when you have the game trending in the most sold games on almost every store across the internet, when you have the Battlefront 2 player count absolutely exploding, there is no way the people working at these companies who can actually do something about making Battlefront 3 haven't seen this, haven't heard about this. They're talking about it. They're standing around at lunch, having conversations and being like, hey, did you see all the Battlefront 3 comments? And that's what we need to keep facilitating. We need to keep creating noise about Battlefront 2 and Battlefront 3 because it opens the discussion. It opens the opportunity for the people who can do something about this to do something about this. Even though things maybe have died off a little bit, it's still early days, guys. Remember that. Keep sharing Battlefront 3. I'll see you on the Battlefront. Subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Discord, TikTok for more and the latest on Battlefront as soon as it happens. Watch this video here and thanks for watching this. Always remember,
stay bombastic.